You know what, I'd be disappointed right now, but you can't deny that that was really spectacular to see. So of course, Red Bull once again showed how dominant they were, and they had a Red Bull 1-2 at Monza in front of the Tifosi. The amount of noise reduction that they used in the actual television world feed, it was crazy. While Nico was talking to Max, they sounded really muffled, and I'm just thinking, with my ears here and what I do, I'm thinking, they probably did some noise reduction there to try and reduce the background noise. And during the actual podium ceremony, it sounded really quiet. Like, I could not hear the crowds at all. Isn't that weird? I think we could all put that noise back into our minds, honestly. But hey, Red Bull were the winners right here. They absolutely showed what they mean. They have won every single race this season. Max has now clinched the record in terms of 10 consecutive wins. You cannot deny it. I may not be a fan of his, like I say, but you cannot deny his skill. He is showing he is a class act. So credit where credit's due right there. Good on for Checo as well. But I want to talk about Ferrari right now, because Ferrari, this was really, really impressive, and I honestly believe that the Fred Vasseur factor is starting to come in right now. It's quite obvious that they were building up for Monza based on the strengths and weaknesses of the SF23. They knew that their car really likes low downforce tracks, and Monza is the epitome of all of that, so just lean into that, kind of like what Williams were doing. It was a lot more forgiving on their tyres, and thusly, they were able to put that car on pole, with Carlos Sainz getting the pole for Ferrari at their home track, and that was absolutely glorious. And throughout all of this, and I think Sainz is an even bigger winner here, this is just proving to myself time and time again that really, Sainz is the more complete driver. Throughout the entire weekend, he has been so much more smooth than Charles Leclerc. And there were moments during the race I was thinking, wow, Charles is looking scrappy here. And yes, of course, we were seeing some really good hard racing, and this is what we want. But throughout all of it, Carlos, apart from that lockup, which did see Max go through, I mean, anyone would crumble under Max right now, he was looking really, really slick and really, really accomplished. Throughout the entire weekend, he was right up there, whereas Charles was a little bit more erratic, as it were. But it was good to see Ferrari come third and fourth, and it was a really close one too. Less than 10 seconds between Ferrari and Red Bull, and there wasn't a safety car to be had. So that's something really encouraging. But we shouldn't expect this again and again, because Ferrari did build up for this track. They had a brand new set of engines, they had specific components for this track. I don't think you'll expect this every single time out, but we did get a really good fun race. And also big shout out to Alex Albon. Even though he did miss out on 6th place, he still got a good amount of points. Now Williams has scored over 20 points, and that's probably their best season in years. I'm not counting 2021. They did score more points, but that was down to Belgium 2021 and George getting second. Alex getting his elbows out and just holding everyone back because they used their car's strength to great effect. They had specific components here, and they knew that this was probably their last best chance to actually score some good points, and they did. Of course, I think they would have scored even more had Logan Sargent not ballsed up Q2, but that's neither here or there, honestly. I mean, it would have been really, really hard for Logan to score a point. There were a lot of good competitive cars out there. Everyone was quite close towards that bottom part. I mean, you know, Valtteri Bottas getting a point for Alfa Romeo, that's a winner as well. Credit where credit's due right there. What they're showing is that they are now in a good fight to try and get 8th place away from Haas, who are doing nothing right now, but I'll talk more about them later. But Alfa are now scrabbling along to try and get something out of this, to try and get 8th place in the Constructors and not be near the bottom. And I think they will do it. And also, the liveries. The Italian teams were on it this weekend. That Ferrari, a tribute to the Le Mans victory, we want more of that. Those race overalls were spectacular. They were so good. I would love it if this became the new brand identity for Scuderia Ferrari for all of their teams. That yellow stripe on the airbox was perfect. Much better than what they did last year, and certainly miles better than that green M. It was just a good thing we didn't really see much of it. That amount of red in yellow and black, perfect. Absolutely great. It's nostalgic, but also new. ish. And that Alfa Romeo from the front with the green and red accents, it actually reminded me of some really classic 90s cars because you get the really drooped down nose. It reminded me of like a classic Jordan or a LaRousse or something like that. I love that little callback. I mean, the C43's livery was already gorgeous with that black and cherry red. Now it was even better with that Italian accent, the tricolore, on the actual nose cone. Very nice. Now, of course, I've got to mention Liam Lawson right here. He's been stepping in for Daniel Ricciardo, and I've not really talked about him all that much because I've been away. But I want to talk about him right now, and he is the business. He is the Red Bull stable's equivalent of Oscar Piastri, an old head on young shoulders, absolutely calm, not putting a foot wrong really, and he almost scored points. And it was just so good to see because everyone was hyping him throughout the entire season, including myself, thinking he would be the next person to get into the AlphaTauri Red Bull group. But nobody was really sure if he would actually get the chance due to Helmut Marko's stubbornness and whatnot, and Super Formula. But even though Super Formula is sort of derided, it shouldn't be really, because it is effectively Formula 1.5. It's very close to Formula 1, closer than Formula 2. By the way, those new Formula 2 cars, mint. Liam did great, and Daniel Ricciardo should be worried right now, because if you look at the championship standings, realistically, Liam's doing a better job than Daniel Ricciardo at the moment. And yes, of course, it's unfortunate that Daniel did injure his wrist, and I wish him a speedy recovery, and we hope to see him again soon. But it does seem like that Liam will get one more chance in Singapore to show what he can do. If Liam can hold his own around Singapore, I think that will stand him in good stead for a really good case in 2024. He's showing he's not being just a sub, he's a super sub. Because I think Daniel wouldn't be getting that much better results, quite frankly. Now let's talk about the things that were a little bit for me, and Oscar Piastri is one of them. There are moments, of course, that he seemed a lot more racy than Lando Norris, and he was extremely unlucky with the whole Lewis Hamilton incident. Quite frankly, it was Lewis's fault, because into that corner, Oscar didn't move, and Lewis was just chopping him in. Piastri does have to take the fault with the whole Lawson thing and not giving that place back at the end. That was really silly for not doing that, and also the team really should have actually said something to him about that. Oscar maybe should have had a bit more of an instinct to think, yeah, you know what, maybe I should have given that place back. So that was on him. Also, I'm actually starting to think more and more that he's now destabilizing Lando Norris, and again, I'll talk about that more later because, you know. Mercedes, I would say Mercedes was, I mean, they were really scruffy, incredibly messy throughout the entire race, both of them getting 5-second time penalties for incidents they really shouldn't have caused. But despite all of that, they still got 5th and 6th. They still got a good amount of points to try and limit the damage that Ferrari are doing to their campaign to stay 2nd place in the Constructors, because Ferrari are catching up here. And if they can carry on this momentum, Ferrari, they will be 2nd place and Mercedes will be dropped down to 3rd. That's really been something that Mercedes have been clinging on to. Even though they're not the best car, even though they think, oh, the sky's falling and we're the worst car ever, they're still 2nd place in the Constructors, you know. It's nothing to sniff at, but right now they're floundering. But hey, they managed to get a result, so in the end they did okay. And the same goes for Logan Sargent. I saw Logan throughout the entire Dutch Grand Prix, and that shot of him with his head in his hands, that was the look of a person who knew that their career in Formula 1 was on life support, or it had been snuffed out. I kind of thought the same thing during qualifying, because this was Williams' best chance to score some points, and getting a double feature Q3 probably would have been very easy to do, but he didn't do it. But at the Dutch Grand Prix, where they didn't expect to do well, they did. So, topsy-turvy much? Yes, he did better than Zandvoort. He actually did finish the race, and he was actually very close on the track to scoring some points, nearly getting close to Bottas, but there's a little bit of argy-bargy. He got a 5-second time penalty. He fell down to 13th, so unlucky there, but he was close. So he did all right, but it was still not quite enough as we would have expected for Williams' best track to score points. Now, okay, I want to talk about McLaren. They were losers right now. I'm not afraid to admit that, and all of this comes down to pit calls and Lando Norris. To me, he absolutely stinks. It's down to his attitude. Throughout the entire race, Lando was just a little bit, I don't know how to describe it. It was just off. I saw this at the Dutch Grand Prix too. He was really timid around Yuki Tsunoda, and eventually he did get past the Japanese driver, but it took a very long time to do so. The McLaren car is falling back into the midfield, and it's really confusing. I mean, what happened to that rear wing that they showed at the Dutch Grand Prix, which actually sorted out a lot of their drag problems? They didn't use it for the Dutch Grand Prix, which I found really confusing. And I know they've got a couple of upgrades coming soon, but right now it just feels like Oscar's the racier one, and Lando is just a bit timid. Like, he's not really trying, and he's complaining on the radio a lot, and he's almost colliding with his teammate when Oscar was coming out of the pits. Yes, of course, their strategy was terrible, and they were trying to get some sort of undercut or trying to get Oscar behind Lando in a non-awkward sort of way on track, but it led to them nearly colliding at turn 1, and Andrea Stella has told them both off that they don't like that sort of thing because, trust me, McLaren has seen a lot of that over their history. They don't want that happening again. And Oscar, he's a lot more aggressive and a lot more optimistic than Lando, and I'm not liking this Lando Norris at the moment because it's just whiny and just under pressure. But I think Oscar's the only teammate he's had which has given him this kind of pressure. Carlos, you didn't really have that sort of thing because Lando was a rookie. He was learning things, and if he felt a bit more confident and stuff, then that was fine. But he wasn't feeling the pressure of having to outperform. And then you get Piastri out-qualifying him. Yes, of course, it's still very much in Lando's favour. But we're now looking at the stats throughout the entire grid, and the McLaren difference isn't the biggest difference out there. No, 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 no. Oscar's catching up. And I know I'm a little bit biased here, but I really didn't like how McLaren carried themselves off in terms of the team and how Lando carried himself. It was just really disappointing. Haas, depressing. Just absolutely depressing. I mean, you look at Ferrari, they did really good. I mean, Alfa Romeo even scored a point, and Zhou was a little bit anonymous out there, and his future's certainly in doubt with his funding almost kind of hanging by a thread, and Teo Porcher waiting in the wings. If he can win the F2 championship, I think he's a dead cert for that seat. And I just feel bad for Zhou because he's fine, he's good, he's a little bit messy, and he does like a little bit of bowling as we saw at the Hungarian Grand Prix, but he's inoffensive, he's alright, he's good representation for the Chinese F1 fans. Haas, I mean, they're a Ferrari-powered team, and they're showing absolutely no innovation. I mean, Hülkenberg did okay for 13th, but they fell back. Magnussen, absolutely nowhere. Just, what's going on? And I'm getting really bored talking about it. So I'm going to talk about Stroll, who was dead last. Dead last. Yes, Alonso was 10th, so that wasn't exactly setting the world alight, but Alonso at least made it to Q3 and, you know, did score some points, whereas Stroll, he did go up the field a little bit, but he wasn't really close to the points, and you just look at him in interviews, he just does not care anymore. But there are rumours that his 2024 seat is secure because, according to rumours, they said there isn't a big enough deficit to Alonso to justify a change in a driver lineup, and I'll hold my tongue. He just looks like a man who does not care anymore. He's checked out. He's just so checked out. And do you really need a driver who's basically checked out already when you've lost third place in the Constructors to Ferrari? I'm not going to blame Aston too much because they flew really high, they're running out of steam. But just you wait till next season, I think they'll have a lot more staying power then. So they're really exceeding expectations this season, so I shouldn't really be too upset at them. But I'm pretty sure a lot of Alpine fans are really upset because this is an absolute train wreck I'm seeing right here. There isn't even a little bit argy-bargy at turn 1 between Gasly and Ocon for really small positions. This, to me, for Alpine fans, this is what we McLaren fans felt at Bahrain this year. Absolute despair, being right at the back, reliability issues, and the drivers just absolutely confused as to what was going on. And especially, it hits even harder when Gasly was third last week. And then he's just right down at the bottom. What was going on? It was just so weird. And I think Gasly was just so depressed and really frustrated because this is the track where he won in 2020. This is the track where he has a lot of good history. And wow, I mean, that car was just slow. The Renault engine is the one with the least horsepower, but this was just night and day. All the other drivers and all the other constructors were better. It was just, wow. And then Ocon, he didn't even finish the race. I feel bad for any Alpine fans right now. It's okay. We McLaren fans have been there. It'll be all right. We hope. So, now that I'm back fully from vacation, I hope to have a little bit more of a consistent schedule. I mean, it might be a little bit patchy for the next few days, but I'll try and get some normality back into the schedule. So, if you can, do like, do share, do subscribe, do all of that jazz, and I'll see you around next time.